These are the stories making the headlines at this hour. North Korea fired its Purasar 3-31 cruise missiles from a submarine just 4 days after conducting the first test firing of the new weapon. Leader Kim Jong-un supervised the launch and stressed the importance of the Navy's nuclear armament. 3 U.S. soldiers were killed in a drone attack in the Jordan-Syria border area. President Joe Biden blamed the Iran-backed groups for the first deadly strike against U.S. forces since the Israel-Hamas war began. The U.S. and China are set to hold their first working-level meeting to counter the production of fentanyl. This comes after their high-level meeting in Bangkok to manage tensions. North Korea and Russia's arms deal was among the topics discussed. Good afternoon. We start with North Korea's latest provocation over the weekend. Pyongyang fired its newest Purasar 3-31 strategic cruise missiles again, but this time from a submarine. Leader Kim Jong-un was at the site, stressing the importance of the Navy's nuclear armament. Choi Min-jung has our top story.
North Korea is believed to have fired several submarine-launched cruise missiles off its eastern coast on Sunday under the supervision of the regime's leader Kim Jong-un. State-run newspaper The Nodongshinmun reported Monday that the Pulhwasar 3-31 strategic cruise missiles were launched from a submarine. North Korea had test-fired this cruise missile for the very first time just 4 days before Sunday's launch. The missile is believed to be nuclear-capable. Kim Jong-un, who oversaw the launch, reportedly stressed that the Navy's nuclear armament is an urgent national agenda. According to the Nodongshinmun, the missiles launched on Sunday flew for 7,421 and 7,445 seconds before hitting preset island targets in the East Sea. Given that 2 flight times were reported, it appears that 2 missiles were fired. More details, including flight distances, were not disclosed. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said Sunday that it had detected several cruise missiles at around 8 a.m. over waters near North Korea's eastern port city of Sinpo, the location of the regime's largest submarine base. The last time Pyongyang fired SLCMs near Sinpo was in March last year. Seoul's military said it has been closely coordinating with the U.S. to monitor additional signs of provocations by the North. Meanwhile, a U.S. State Department spokesperson reportedly urged Pyongyang to refrain from further, quote, threatening activity and called on the regime to engage in dialogue. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea saw a steep decline in service exports in the third quarter of last year. Data released by the OECD on Monday shows that South Korea's service exports tumbled 7.6% on year to around $30 billion. This stands in stark contrast to the average value of service exports of OECD countries, surging nearly 10% over the same period. The drop in South Korea's service exports was also the second largest among the OECD member countries after Denmark. And South Korea is one of the only 2 OECD countries that saw service exports fall for 4th consecutive quarters, further raising concerns that declining service exports may offset the sign of recovery seen in the chip sector. With the popularity of Korean food on the rise, instant rice products have seen record sales overseas. According to the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs and the Korea Agro Fisheries and Food Trade Corporation on Monday, exports of processed rice foods last year came to over $217 million. That is the highest recorded figure to date. The amount was a 9.5% jump from the previous year. Exports of processed rice products have increased every year since 2015, with the popularity of products like instant rice, frozen kimbap, and tteokbokki. By country, the U.S. accounted for more than half of the total. Following the government's announcement regarding eliminating mandatory weekend closing days for large supermarkets, an increasing number of big retailers will close their doors on weekdays rather than weekends. Shoppers are embracing the change. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
It was the 4th Sunday of the month, but a large supermarket in Seoul was bustling with shoppers. Seoul district in Seoul has decided that big retailers have to close on alternate Wednesdays instead of Sundays, following the scrapping of mandatory weekend closing days for large supermarkets. This was announced during an open debate held by South Korea's Office for Government Policy Coordination last week, and consumers are welcoming the change.
There were times I arrived and found the store was closed. Now it's great that it opens every Sunday.
Since I'm working, I only have time to shop on weekends. Coming to the store late on weekdays is tough, so I used to come once every 2 weeks, which was inconvenient.
On the other hand, traditional market merchants are deeply concerned as the number of customers visiting the market may drop.
There will probably be fewer people at street markets when large supermarkets open during weekends. When it's too cold or hot, many people would prefer to shop indoors.
Before the change, large supermarkets had to close their stores for 2 days a month on weekends, for example on the second and fourth Sunday, which had become the norm in many regions. Large stores are still not allowed to operate at all between midnight and 10 a.m. However, the ban on online deliveries during those hours has been lifted. Originally, the regulations were introduced to protect small and traditional markets. However, the landscape of market competition has shifted from supermarkets competing with small markets to offline versus online shopping. 신하영, Arirang News.
Seoul City's climate card, the unlimited public transportation pass, was used by 71,000 people on its first day on Saturday. The card, which costs 65,000 Korean won, roughly $48, provides unlimited use of certain Seoul Metro subway lines, buses, and public bicycles. As the name would suggest, Seoul City's aim with the card is to address climate change by encouraging more people to use public transport. The climate card also works out cheaper than using a contactless credit card or regular transport card. Three U.S. soldiers were killed in a drone attack in the Jordan-Syria border area. President Joe Biden blamed Iran-backed groups for the first daily strike against U.S. forces since the Israel-Hamas war began. Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. officials say 3 U.S. servicemen were killed after an unmanned aerial drone launched an attack against U.S. forces stationed in northeastern Jordan near the Syrian border. During the attack, dozens of others were injured, with many being evaluated for possible traumatic brain injury. An umbrella organization of hardline Iran-backed militant groups, the Islamic Resistance in Iraq, claimed responsibility for the attack. According to U.S. President Joe Biden, Washington is still gathering information on the attack, but said that it was carried out by radical Iran-backed militant groups operating in Syria and Iraq. In a statement released by the White House, Biden vowed to carry on fighting against terrorism and said the U.S. will hold all those involved responsible. Since the outbreak of war in Gaza on October 7th last year, U.S. forces have come under attack more than 150 times by Iran-backed groups in the Middle East, leading to at least 70 injuries prior to Sunday's attack. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister's office said on Sunday that a 4-way meeting between the U.S., Israel, Qatar, and Egypt took place in Europe to discuss a potential deal to release all Israeli hostages held by Hamas in exchange for a 2-month-long ceasefire. The meeting was later confirmed to have been held in Paris and was described by the Prime Minister's office as being constructive. According to U.S. officials speaking to the Associated Press on Saturday, the hostage deal would be carried out in 2 phases. In the first phase, fighting would stop to allow for the remaining women, elderly, and wounded hostages to be released by the militant group. Israel and Hamas would then work out details during the first 30 days of the pause for the second phase, where Israeli soldiers and civilian men would be released. Israel says 132 hostages remain in captivity, including 2 children. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Staying in the Middle East, people in Gaza are fighting for their lives every second because of the war between Israel and Hamas, with no clear end in sight. Our Ian Hee hears the story from Oxfam International in Ramallah, West Bank.
An intentionally made, unlivable piece of land. This is how Dr. Hadeel Qazzaz, Oxfam's regional gender coordinator in Ramallah currently describes the Gaza Strip.
It's a humanitarian catastrophe. It's something that have never happened in modern history, not in this scale, not in this speed, not in this way.
Since the start of the war, people in the Gaza Strip have been displaced multiple times and are evacuating to the southern part to flee the ongoing bombardment by the Israeli occupation.
First, they pushed people to 60% of the land. Now they are pushing people to less than 10% of the land of the Gaza Strip. People are squeezed like a lemon.
More than 80% of the total population seeks refuge in the southern cities of Rafah and Khan Yunis. Amid constant bombarding, leaflets fly around ordering people to evacuate, immediately turning the area into a total war zone.
So the whole family fled the house and they were running for their life. They were just running. They didn't know where to go. They didn't carry anything with them.
The biggest hospital in Khan Yunis, Nasser Hospital, is under bombardment with at least 100,000 people forced to evacuate. This is twice the number of people who have evacuated from Al-Shifa Hospital, Israel's previous target in the north of the Gaza Strip. This includes civilians who are taking shelter, injured people undergoing treatment, and doctors who are exhausted. Already, the lack of essential medication had doctors performing operations without anesthesia, including amputations and cesarean sections.
Newborn babies who die because of hyperthermia or because of starvation, because their mothers cannot nurse them. Many babies are born premature.
Many had to flee to Rafah from Khan Yunis, which is already crowded with over 1 million people. Dr. Qazzaz describes how people there are having to pitch tents anywhere they can, in the street, in basements, and under trees. And with not enough humanitarian aid for the entire population, people in Gaza are starving.
Every aspect of life in Gaza at the moment is totally destroyed. Totally.
Ian Hee, Arirang News.
The U.S. and China are set to hold their first working-level meeting to counter the production of fentanyl. This comes after their high-level meeting in Bangkok to manage tensions. North Korea and Russia's arms deal was among the topics discussed. Ian Jin has the details.
Senior officials from the U.S. and China will meet in Beijing on Tuesday to launch what Washington is calling a task force to resume formal bilateral cooperation on counter-narcotics of fentanyl, a drug responsible for a deadly overdose epidemic in the United States. During the recent Davos Forum in Switzerland, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken mentioned the seriousness of synthetic opioids being the #1 killer of Americans aged between 18 and 49. Beijing had suspended all assistance with the issue in 2022, but it was during their November summit in San Francisco where Chinese President Xi Jinping and American President Joe Biden agreed that the two rival global powers should work together to stem the deadly opioid crisis. Tuesday's meeting comes following the latest discussions between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi on Friday and Saturday in Bangkok, Thailand, where the two sides had, according to China's foreign ministry, candid, substantive, and fruitful strategic exchanges on bilateral, regional, and global issues, including those concerning North Korea, Russia's war in Ukraine, the Middle East, the South China Sea, and Myanmar. According to a White House report, concerns were raised regarding the recent testing of weapons in North Korea, as well as the growing relationship between the North and Russia and what might reflect on Kim Jong-un's intentions. The two diplomats also discussed the importance of maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. A senior U.S. administration official said U.S. President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping are expected to hold phone talks this spring as part of efforts to responsibly manage tensions between their countries. Talks are expected sometime in the spring to discuss risks posed by advanced forms of AI, as well as hopes of resuming higher levels of military-to-military channels. Washington also expects Secretary of State Antony Blinken to travel to China at some point this year. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
In Paris, climate activists threw soup at the Mona Lisa at the Louvre Museum, advocating for a sustainable food system. This came as France is seeing more than a week of protests from farmers demanding better pay and living conditions. Lee Si-hu reports.
Video footage shows two women hurling soup at the protective glass in front of the iconic Mona Lisa painting in Paris' Louvre Museum on Sunday. Before being led away by security guards, they stood in front of the painting and shouted, "What is more important, art or the right to a healthy and durable diet? And farmers are dying on the job." They are activists representing an organization called Food Response, which shared a statement saying the protest aims to draw attention to the need to protect the environment and sources of food. This came more than a week into protests from French farmers who are demanding better pay and living conditions, and just hours before the French government deployed a large number of security forces around Paris as the angry farmers prepared to mount a siege on the French capital. The farmers are demanding better purchase prices for produce by supermarket and industrial buyers, changes to complex environmental regulations, and the phasing out of a tax break on diesel for farm equipment. Throughout France, farmers' unions have set up roadblocks to increase pressure on the government.
And with all the health and climate issues, the lack of respect for agriculture and farmers, we desire to be able to live with dignity from our profession, and the government will have to listen to us and hear us.
In response, the government announced a series of measures on Friday which included an end to diesel fuel taxes for farm vehicles. France would also remain opposed to the European Union signing a free trade deal with the Mercosur trade group, of which Latin American countries are part, which may result in what farmers say is unfair competition for French farmers. Despite the concessions, major farmers' unions say their protests will continue as the government's plan doesn't go far enough. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
Now we're coming close to the end of the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. We've seen thrilling performances from the young athletes every day. Our culture correspondent Song Yujin takes us there.
Jonathan Lurimi's silver medal at Gangwon 2024 is not just his first Olympic medal. It's also Tunisia's first Winter Olympic medal. The 17-year-old bobsledder is one of 3 athletes writing history at the 2024 Gangwon Youth Winter Olympic Games. Tunisia is among the 5 countries making their Winter Olympic debuts.
Oh, it's a crazy feeling. Unbelievable. I didn't think it was possible to go this far when I started with the sport, and now I hope being an idol for them to try winter sports so that it can be bigger in Tunisia.
Jonathan's journey with bobsleigh began through the Pyeongchang 2018 Legacy Foundation's New Horizons Academy.
Athletes from countries that don't really have winters can't really give winter sports a try. But the Olympics should be something everyone can enjoy. Projects like the New Horizon Academy help these athletes learn winter sports and pursue their dreams. Later, they could become Winter Olympic ambassadors in their own countries.
Established in 2019, the Pyeongchang 2018 Legacy Foundation aims to preserve competition venues and teach Olympic values to the next generation. In 2022, its New Horizons Academy invited some 100 athletes from 27 countries, mainly from Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia, to Korea.
We actually had them try every different winter sport. And every time they did a sport, we kind of measured their performances. And then after the 2-week program, we invited them back in the winter, but this time we designated sports for them.
Training camps were held every summer and winter leading up to the Gangwon 2024 qualification period last year. In December, 25 athletes, including Jonathan, qualified for the Games. Also among them is Thai bobsledder Agnes Kampeol, who won silver at the women's monobob this time. Now, with less than a week remaining until the Games draw to a close, the project has set its sights on a bigger goal.
Starting next month, some of these kids, some of these young athletes, we're going to start training for Milano 2026.
That, of course, includes Jonathan.
Of course, I want to be in the big Olympics, the Milano Cortina, hopefully. I'm going to try everything that I can, work hard to qualify for that.
Helping these athletes realize their dreams, the New Horizons Academy shows that nothing is impossible.
I believe. So you have to believe too, and do what you can do, work hard, and you will achieve what you can.
송유진, 아리랑 뉴스, 평창.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In Turkey, two masked gunmen attacked a Roman Catholic church on Sunday during morning service, killing one person. Following the morning attack in the capital, Istanbul, Turkey's interior minister confirmed later in the day that the two suspects have since been captured. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility, posting on Telegram on Sunday that two of its fighters carried out the attack and fled to safety. The Turkish government has not yet confirmed the motive. The shooting took place at the Church of Santa Maria, located at the Bosphorus on the European side of Istanbul. As seen on the CCTV footage released by Turkish media, the two gunmen followed a man who had just entered during the Sunday Mass at around 11:40 a.m. and shot him, which fatally wounded the victim. The assailants were seen calmly leaving the scene. The Vatican offered support as the Pope expressed closeness to the community of the Santa Maria Church in his weekly prayer. In Iran, the state-run IRNA news agency reported on Sunday that Tehran has successfully launched 3 satellites into space. Sunday's launch also reportedly saw the successful use of Iran's previously failed Simorgh rocket. Iran's state TV showed the nighttime launch at the Imam Khomeini spaceport in the rural Semnan province. The payload included 3 satellites, Mahda, Kayhan-2 and Hatef-1. The agency described Mahda as a research satellite, while the Kayhan and Hatef were nanosatellites for global positioning and communication. After 5 failed launches for the Simorgh program, the space rocket reportedly saw its first successful liftoff. The West has been expressing concerns over Iran's space program for its potential contribution to Tehran's ballistic missiles capabilities. UN sanctions in relation to Iran's ballistic missile program has expired October last year. In finance news, the billionaire chairman and CEO of the global luxury goods company LVMH, Bernard Arnault, has once again become the world's richest man. LVMH's share prices shot up on Friday as the news of strong sales hit the trading floors. According to the Forbes real-time billionaires list, Arnault and his family's net worth increased to $207.8 billion after the $23.6 billion increase on Friday, beating Tesla CEO Elon Musk, whose net worth remains at $204.5 billion. Arnault's 5 children all work at LVMH, where 2 of his sons were recently appointed to the company's board. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. After a cold start, afternoon highs are rising fast to hover above norms. Then we can look forward to an even warmer afternoon on Tuesday. But of course, it's that ultrafine dust that's been sweeping most central parts of Korea. Jeollado and Gyeongsang-do provinces will also see dust levels rising at night. And tomorrow looks to be a dusty one for most parts of Korea. Meanwhile, many areas of Gangwon-do province had freezing temperatures under cold wave alerts this morning, but athletes should notice a big rise in highs this afternoon under bright skies. Afternoon highs in Seoul should top out at 4, Daegu getting up to 7 degrees Celsius this afternoon under sunny skies nationwide, but East Coast regions are under a dry weather advisory with strong winds, so fire safety is a must. We can expect warmer than average temperatures this week with frequent rain and snow in the forecast for southern provinces. So please take the weather into account and plan accordingly this week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
North Korea's latest missile launch raises the question, where is Kim Jong-un getting the money from? According to Korea Institute for Defense Analyses, North Korea fired around 70 ballistic missiles in 2022. That cost around 690 billion Korean won, or roughly 580 million US dollars. The total for last year could be around $250 million when it fired more than 30 missiles. While North Korean exports are banned due to sanctions, cybercrimes are deemed as a major funding source. In fact, North Korea-linked hackers stole $1 billion worth of cryptocurrency last year. Based on the Bank of Korea's estimate for North Korea's annual budget, that accounts for 1/9, which certainly could have been used for its people suffering in poverty than being into the air. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.